Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com. Leave your show comments, requests, and discussion topics on the new WDW Tiki Room voicemail. Call 850-888-TIKI. That's 850-888-8454. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at WDW Tiki Room.
Hey, don't forget to send me a postcard from the Muppet Studios.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't do that, Walter.
But, Gary...
Because... you're coming with us!
Book your next Disney vacation with Kristen Hetzel of Magical Journeys Travel, an unconventional agency for the unconventional client. Magical Journeys is dedicated to finding the best pricing for your next magical journey.
Wait a minute, I love that idea.
Kristen will work hard to save you money and give you the quality of service you deserve. As a well-established agency and an authorized Disney vacation planner, Magical Journeys Travel has many years in the travel industry and dealing with the infamous Disney reservation system. Let Kristen help you plan your next magical journey. To book travel or for a free quote, please contact Kristen Hetzel at www.magicaljourneysttravel.com/Kristen. Follow her on Twitter at Kristen Hetzel.
Right! Come on, everybody.
Magical Journeys, an authorized Disney vacation planner.
You are going to be a force for good and a very important sorcerer.
The following is an original production of the Sorcerer Radio Network.
Are you insane?
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
Those who are made uncomfortable by enclosed dark spaces or simulators bypass this experience.
Up and at 'em, pal! Oh boy, are we glad you're here! Big doings going on, so let's get started. See you real soon.
Let's do this thing!
Interface complete.
Broadcasting from Music City.
Oh, look at all the people.
It's WDW Tiki Room, the show about all things Disney.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
So it is. And what darling people I have sitting under me.
With your hosts, Kristen, Aljon, and Natalie.
Lieber, I almost fell out of my upper perch. Glad to see you all aboard. Sure, or wherever you are.
Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com. Aljon here, and Kristen and Natalie are out for today. However, I've got a big surprise for you. Tom Bancroft, known for his animation with Disney films he worked on, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Mulan, The Lion King, just to name a few, and we have him here in studio to answer your questions. So enjoy our very special interview with Disney animator Tom Bancroft. WDW Tiki Room, Celebrity Interview. In the Tiki Room with famed Disney artist, please help me welcome Mr. Tom Bancroft. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to have you on the program. Of course, the Tiki Room, the show about all things Disney. We love all the work that you've been involved in for the many, many years, working with your brother Tony on these projects like Mulan, of course, The Lion King. Why don't you tell a little bit about your growing up? Where did you grow up, and where did you find that you had a skill for drawing and art in general?
Well, I grew up in California, and as you mentioned, I have a twin brother, Tony, and we both always did cartooning and later on comic strips for the high school and junior college newspapers. And we were really big into Charles Schulz and the Peanuts and comic strips in general. That was our first love. And through that, then also around, growing up, we were really big into Marvel comics. So, drawing superheroes, but that was hard. A lot of anatomy and stuff that kind of came later, but at the time just seems too impossible to learn. And kind of fell in animation, really. But, growing up, our loves, and this was during the kind of late 70s for the most part that we were growing up. So in California, what was big was even back then was like Ray Harryhausen movies. We would see, Clash of the Titans and movies like that, and love those, and would see some of his older movies on Sunday afternoon movie for a Sunday afternoon, kind of a TV show. And, because this was before video and DVD and all that, so you really only saw a movie once, and you had to be there sitting at your television when it came on. You couldn't DVR it. So I just remember those were big events, you know, when a cool movie came on Sunday afternoon and we were home and it happened to be a Ray Harryhausen movie or something like that. And Ray Harryhausen, for those that don't know, he was one of the very first stop motion animators. And so he did Jason and the Argonauts, and he would do all the animation, the stop motion animation of the you know, monsters and things like that would come to life, and the live action people would fight them. So
yeah. Those creature features, as it were. I think a lot of people forget about that. Jason and Argonauts is such a great feat of animation for that time.
Oh, it is. I mean, even now it holds up. I mean, you can still watch it, even with CG animation, and go, how did he do that? And there was one guy and maybe an assistant, and he was doing like 6 skeleton creatures fighting this live action that wasn't there, you know. And so you had to imagine, or not imagine, but frame by frame go through the film, and it was just amazing. And so we would read up on that kind of stuff, and this was early visual effects, you know, that we were very affected by and interested in. And so it kind of made sense that when we hit junior college in Anaheim area, we met a guy that was also doing a newspaper for our school, a comic strip on our school newspaper, and his name was Eric Stefani. And we immediately hit it off because he was a really good cartoonist, and we were also doing comic strips and liked our stuff, and so we were just, you know, artistically attracted to each other, I guess you could say. But became really good friends, and then that summer we ended up making he invited us to his house and he showed us this stop motion animation he did. It was clay animation. And during this time, this was back when Will Vinton was doing clay animation, like the California grapes that were on the commercials, you know, heard it through the grapevine. Those were really big at the time. And so we started doing clay animation with him, and that summer did a little animated short. And that's why I brought in the Ray Harryhausen influence, that because we loved stop motion and didn't realize we could actually just get a Super 8 camera and create our own 3-dimensional animation with clay animated puppets. Once we did that, we were just hooked. We were like, you know, seeing it move and come to life, really. And then kind of backtracked and went, wait a second, but we already like to draw, and kind of put the two together and said, wait, animation, drawing, hey, we could become like a Disney animator, maybe, like a traditional animator. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of strange, because back then you kind of had to find your way when it came to animation and all that, because there weren't those, you know, as soon as Beauty and the Beast and those things became big in the later, you know, whatever, 80s, 90s, you started having on your videos those behind-the-scene clips of animators working. Well, they didn't have that back when I was growing up, so you didn't really get to see that there were actual animators that got paid to make Disney movies. So we kind of had to fall into it, but once we did, we fell hard, and then found out about California Institute of the Arts, which is a school in California there that teaches traditional animation, and it was founded by Walt Disney. So it's an old, you know, Disney school basically, and it was a training ground for a lot of Disney animators, and like John Lasseter went there, and Glenn Keane, and all the big Disney animators of the, you know, 80s and 90s and on back.
It's an amazing story, and it's great that you and your brother were able to find, you know, something that you guys were passionate about at an early age, and then develop into such a great artist and develop such a great canon of work. And a lot of people don't realize it. You know, you and your brother, you know, had so many films to your credit. You know, working with The Lion King and Mulan and Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Mulan. I mean, Pocahontas. I mean, the list goes on and on of your work. What is it like? Because I have got a brother myself.
All right,
he's a younger brother. Mm-hmm. But what's it like being in a creative situation with your brother, where you know, you grew up together, you have the same art, you have the same type of passions, you're working on films together? What was it like working with a sibling, especially your twin brother, on all and so close with these numerous projects throughout the years? How was that? And did the relationship tend to be a little strained because of all of this work you had done together?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, you know, a lot of people ask that, what was it like working with your twin brother on these Disney movies? And, my first answer is, well, we really didn't, because what ended up happening was, we both started back in 1989, and we started at the opening day for Disney MGM Studios, their animation department, they had a tour there. And so we were on tour for the first, few years of our career, where people could walk by and watch us, animate and draw. And, Tony was only there for the first year. Right out of CalArts, we both got accepted into an internship in California. I'm backing up. So we went to CalArts, we got accepted our sophomore year into an internship for Disney. And that internship was in California because they were still building the Disney MGM studios at the time, because this was about the end of 1988. And so they were looking for people to staff that animation studio / tour that they wanted to open. And so we were in the internship to staff that. Basically, we knew that if we got accepted, we would be moving to Florida to end up, be staff of that studio there. And we were fine with that. I mean, we were excited about the chance to work with Disney, and then on top of that, to move somewhere, new and exciting sounded great to us. But what ended up happening was Tony only stayed for a year, because he ended up becoming engaged to his girlfriend during that first year there in Florida. And so he ended up moving back to get married and took a position at the California studio. So our first feature film was Rescuers Down Under. Mm-hmm. And we did that at the Florida studio. And Tony, about halfway through that feature, because right before that, our first project was Roller Coaster Rabbit, which was a Roger Rabbit cartoon short. And it came out with Dick Tracy way back when. We did that together in Florida, and then Tony, about halfway through or toward the beginning of Rescuers, ended up leaving and going to California. And so the rest of his career was in California, and I stayed. I ended up getting married, and we kind of set up our life in Florida. So I ended up staying in Florida for the next 12 years or so, and while Tony was out in California. So most of our Disney career was, separated by 3,000 miles. So that's not to say we still didn't compete with each other. We did. And, there were some negative times there, especially at the beginning, when you're young, you're trying to move up in the company, and you want to, Disney is very much, it's very competitive, and it's very much like every other company where you're really competing for the next spot up, with all of your peers. So all of us young cleanup artists, which is where you start in animation, is you don't become an animator right out of school. So you go into cleanup and then you move into animation. But all of us cleanup guys, we're all young, about the same age, just getting married, and in our early 20s, and all wanted to be animators, including my brother and I. And so we would do animation tests late at night and on weekends, and trying to submit those to, because even while you're employed there, you still have to, it's almost like you're not, when you want to move up, you have to do stuff on your own time to prove that you can become an animator. And so we would show each other stuff, but we were always very hard on each other, and, he'd give me notes on my tests and I'd give him notes on his. And, but it was certainly an exciting time. And then when we finally did start breaking in animation, Tony had an opportunity on Rescuers Down Under to become an animating assistant. And meanwhile, Florida was much smaller and there were no animation positions open, so I couldn't move up. So for Rescuers Down Under, I wasn't animating. I was still in cleanup, and he was. So that made it hard, because I'm watching him, animate on Rescuers Down Under while I'm still doing cleanup. I mean, we're still working on a Disney feature film, so I mean, I'm acting like it was a big deal. At the time it was.
Sure.
But looking back, you're like, well, we still worked on the same movie, and it's still pretty cool to say, both of our names are in the credits, so does it really matter, But, and then I moved up on Beauty and the Beast. I became an animator on Beauty and the Beast, and so we were both animators on that. And then Lion King and Aladdin, we were both animating, but again, 3,000 miles apart. So we were competing, but not, most of the stuff that would come to Florida was, segments of film, of the film, because we were a lot smaller. We were sort of the number 2 studio for many years. They would just send us sequences. So like on Lion King, we did the Can't Wait to Be King sequence all in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it was perfect because it had a little different style to it. And it's all, Simba singing about Can't Wait to Be King. But the neat thing was on Lion King, we did have a nice moment there where we kind of melded, Tony and I, because I was doing young Simba, and meanwhile Tony was the supervising animator Pumbaa. And so in that one sequence where Simba, I got the section of Simba waking up right after he's been exiled, and he thinks that he's killed his dad, Mufasa, and now he's out in the desert, he's run away, and he's unconscious, and then he wakes up. That whole sequence where he wakes up all the way going into Hakuna Matata, that sequence I did all the young Simba, and Tony did all the Pumbaa, and then his best friend, Mike Suri, did all the Timon. And so it was neat because it was just the three of us doing that one sequence, because it was just those three characters in that whole sequence. And I flew out to California for that, and we worked together for a week on that one sequence. I mean, just to get it started. We didn't finish that one sequence.
I was going to say a week. That's not a whole lot of time.
No, I know. But we did pull an all-nighter one night to rough out a ton of scenes with all three of us. We did. It was something I'll never forget, but we did a bunch of scenes all in one night. And just show the director the night, right before I was about to fly back to Florida. So that was an exciting time. It was a neat thing to be able to say, yeah, there's this one sequence where we worked really closely together, and I was doing one character talking to his character,
Wow.
And so that was kind of a neat thing. But other than that, a lot of our films we've worked very separately. He was doing a different character, or like on Mulan, he became co-director. He was co-directing Mulan, and moved out to Florida for Mulan after so many years in California. So the neat thing about that was he was out there with his family for a year and a half, and I was a supervising animator, Mushu, the dragon. And so he was my boss in a way, being the co-director, but I had a lot of responsibility, with Mushu. And so we were both happy. It wasn't like there was any competition on that. I didn't necessarily want to be the director. I was very happy supervising Mushu, but he was happy doing what he was doing, and it was just, we'd go out to lunch and talk shop and stuff.
What was it like in getting the call that, okay, I'm coming up and I'm going to be part of the legacy of Disney, even as you said, a cleanup artist from Cal Arts? You graduate or you go to school and hey, look, I'm going to be put right into the cog of the big Disney machine, and I get to meet the 9 old men, or I get to work on these things. I mean, what was it like for you to know that you're going to get this really cool gig, and did you ever expect it to be in a position where you were working on some of the most beloved films of all time?
No. You can't. It's interesting because when Tony and I got into animation was dead, and we were actually being told by people that were in the industry not to do it. If you ever want to support your family or anything like that, I remember this one lady told me, don't ever get in animation, because they were shutting down studios. Well, I was at Cal Arts in '88. That year that we were in our freshman year, they shut down Filmation Studios, and Hanna-Barbera had massive layoffs. A lot of the TV animation was dying and going away. And, here we are all starry-eyed. But at the same time, while that was in a real bad situation, and Disney was too, Disney wasn't doing so hot. When we went, Oliver and Company had just come out. I think when we were just starting our freshman year, Roger Rabbit had come out. Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out the summer between our freshman and sophomore year, and that's really what ignited the second renaissance of Disney animation, was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then, of course, right after that was The Little Mermaid. Right after that was Oliver and Company, and then Little Mermaid. Now, a lot of people don't know, but Oliver and Company really made good money for the time. Now it'd be like this disgrace, and they'd be embarrassed about it. But at the time, it was really good money that movie made. And then, of course, Little Mermaid came out, and it just blew everybody away. So, and then, Who Framed Roger Rabbit really restarted the Renaissance. So we had no idea going into animation that we just were doing it for the love of it, and we just felt like this is perfect for us and what we wanted to do and what we loved. But not knowing that it was we were right at the cusp of the second boom, and what a lot of people call the second golden age of Disney animation. Really, we were there for the whole ride, because like I said, it started at Who Framed Roger Rabbit into Little Mermaid, and then The Lion King, and then Pocahontas, and Aladdin then Pocahontas. And then we did Mulan out of Florida too. So, it was it was a good ride, and it was a great time to be at Disney. So, yeah, to say, and we did get to meet a lot of the 9 old men that were still alive. They would come by the studio, in California when we were interns. They would come by, and so met Frank and Ollie and Ward Kimball and Mark Davis. And they would come down to Florida too. I mean, I remember our opening day at Disney MGM Studios, which is now Hollywood Studios. At opening day, they had, I think 5 or 6 of the remaining Disney's 9 Old Men there for the opening. And it was just for marketing and for press with the new opening of the animation studio and tour. So, but afterwards, when all the press was over, we invited them into our studio, and we were a tiny studio. We were probably like 50 to 70 people. So we could all gather around this one table in this big conference room, have them all sitting at the conference room, and they just sat around and talked about the days with Walt, and they told Walt stories, and they talked about working on Snow White, and they talked about working on Lady and the Tramp, and all these great stories that we heard right out of their mouths. It was really inspiring. We would ask questions, and they had a little bit of interest in what was going on in animation with like The Little Mermaid. Like everybody wanted to know, what did you think of The Little Mermaid? To Frank and Ollie, and they were always very polite, but they didn't have a whole lot of opinions. To them, it was different. What you guys are doing now is so different from what we did back then, and we didn't think it was. We were just trying to emulate what they did. But they just looked at it as a totally different thing. The movies we were making, like Aladdin, I remember a lot of the 9 old men that were still alive would say it was, like I remember Mark Davis saying, we would have never have made Aladdin, because it was so topical. It was so current. There were references in there to current day, like Iago says, not, at one point, and that was like, at that time, that was a funny saying,
Yeah.
And now even kids don't get that reference, but he said, Walt was never into that. He didn't like to have any kind of topical, present day references or wording or anything like that. So he was a little bit more classic. And I agree, you look at the genie, and the genie was really, more of that day, or even today, kind of a character.
That would be interesting to note, to see how they would react to something like Tangled, which is has a bunch of references.
Yeah. I guarantee, and unfortunately, they're all dead now. None of them are still alive.
That's right.
But yeah, I don't think they would be that into it, because again, I think that was important to them. And I don't know if it was really as thought about as they made it sound, I think that wasn't the trend back then, and so they probably wouldn't have gone that direction anyway. But I don't know. I mean, you look at a lot of the old 40s Bugs Bunny cartoons, and there was a lot of, very topical, there were caricatures of, Charlie Chaplin and, people like that were in the shorts. They were always making present day references in the Bugs Bunny short cartoons. But Disney didn't really go that direction.
Well, it's great nonetheless. I think that you did carry on that tradition, and I think a lot of Disney fans will, and obviously box office proves it, that these stories, no matter how many little references there are to pop culture, that they still stand the test of time. Let me ask you about this. Was there any to be a fly on the wall during those type of meetings with your staff of animators and the 9 old men, or the 6 old men, if you will, that came by MGM during that time to tell you stories. Is there any one particular thing that you picked up, or maybe a couple things that you picked up from them that may have helped carry you through, or perhaps some words of advice that still holds true for you today?
That's a hard one. It's always hard to answer those kind of questions.
Sorry to spring it on you.
No, that's okay. I mean, the thing about the Night Old Men is that's amazing to me that I can think, and this is more general, unfortunately, but is that, a lot of what even the CG, Pixar animators nowadays, but especially us traditional animators in the second generation of Disney, second or third, whatever you want to call it, but the second golden age, we really were just trying to emulate what they did. I mean, they started with nothing. I mean, they didn't have some of the principles that we were working off of. We were on their shoulders, They were started with a blank piece of paper and just the concept of, okay, you make something move by spacing the drawing. Okay, if I draw it here, now I'm going to move it over 1 inch on the next piece of paper, and it's going to look like it moved across the page. I mean, they're the most basic concepts. And that's what they started with, because that's all there was at that time. But then they brought in squash and stretch. I mean, that was a concept that they brought in back in Snow White, where you had a pliability where you could squash the cheeks when a character, closed its mouth. The cheeks would squish out a little bit. And when he opened and his eyes would go wide, the face would stretch, and you'd have a shape change that would give a pliability. We call it squash and stretch in animation. And that's still that lesson, that they created with the dwarves back in Snow White. We were still using that concept, in Pocahontas and in Mulan and, Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. Not to mention overlap and all these other concepts that they created that we would then just repeat to the new guy below us, But that's something that I'll never forget, is just that, how much we owed them. And I think that's what happened. Every time they would come by while they were still alive, that was the praise they got from the animators, is that, consistent and constant, wow, we can't thank you enough. You guys, we're working off your shoulders. We're standing on the shoulders of giants because of what you created. And I remember that Ray Harryhausen came. That was a big day for me too. And he came to the studio in Florida and gave a little talk for us. And it was the same kind of awe and inspiration for all of us when he came too, because even the Night Old Men were kind of working off of concepts and things that he developed even before them, and some of it simultaneous to them. But I mean, those guys were just visionaries, and who would have thought, I don't think we created anything new. We just were using the tools that they gave us, basically, and creating new characters, yes, but not really new animation concepts, because it all had been created already at that point. Now we were just trying to live up to what they had done, And the funny thing is, and this I do remember, I remember Mark Davis and Frank and Ollie, they would all say, well, you guys draw so much better than we drew. When we would ask them about, Aladdin or whatever movie we had just finished, they'd say, well, I mean, you guys just, you draw so much better than we did. And that's why these movies look so great. We can't believe how good they look. And we were like, what? We couldn't believe they were saying that, because we still look at their drawings and think, put them on such a pedestal. But, and I guess what they're saying is that they were the top guys. They were the top, and you could still look at their drawings and probably say they would be top today too. But I think overall the studio wasn't as strong. There were a lot of beginners. There were a lot of people that weren't, we kind of look back at the past and think everybody was that level. And that's kind of what they were saying, was that, no, there were a lot of bad artists, and they would say stuff like that. And, we couldn't believe it, because you only hear about, the top stuff and the really good, but they had to go over a lot of stuff and things like that. And, not to say that we all weren't the best artists in the world either, but they looked at us as a studio and said, you guys are producing artwork that we as a studio couldn't produce back then. And that was really neat to hear.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more from our guest, Tom Bancroft, Disney Animator, when we come back.
The WDW Tiki Room, Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com.
Are you looking for some fun on Facebook with fellow Disney fans? Then you need to join the Sorcerer Radio Disney Fun Zone. The Fun Zone is an exclusive online gathering place where young and old alike can come and share their love of all things Disney in a family-friendly atmosphere. It'll also be your place for exclusive downloads, images, giveaways, and more. Join us online by going to facebook.com and searching for Sorcerer Radio Disney Fun Zone. That's the Sorcerer Radio Disney Fun Zone, part of Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com.
Pardon the interruption. I have some news which I believe you will find most interesting.
Would you like to hear the latest in Marvel television, film, and comic book news? Are you looking for some suggestions on what to pick up on New Comic Book Day? Well, join Mike every Saturday night at 8 p.m. on Mighty Marvel Geeks here on Sorcerer Radio, your source for all things Marvel.
There is a matter that requires your attention.
Mighty Marvel Geeks. Assemble!
All wrapped up here, sir. Will there be anything else?
Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Weekly live shows and podcasts.
RFR.
Like Rebel Force Radio on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Rebel Force Radio.
Your new source for the Force.
Rebel Force Radio with Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack. Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com. The WDW Tiki Room, the radio show about everything Disney. Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com. WDW Tiki Room, celebrity interview.
We're back speaking to our special guest, Tom Bancroft, Disney Animator.
Were you around at that point when the studio ceased to be an actual animation studio? Over there at the MGM?
No. I had left. I actually left in 2000 to go to work for a small studio, Big Idea Productions, in Chicago, and they did the computer animated short videos called VeggieTales.
Yep.
And so I helped develop their first feature film and things like that, and I was there for a couple of years. And they had layoffs, unfortunately, and then we moved back to Florida. But when we did, again, this was a couple of years later. It was just to help finish up Brother Bear. I animated on Brother Bear.
That's right.
That was my last film. And the studio had changed quite a bit while I was gone. I mean, it was just, it was kind of, there was a lot of negativity. The leadership of the whole company, of the president of Disney Animation, was not very strong. He was not very pro feature animation, and they were getting into TV animation more and just wanted to do cheap and fast, and some of the quality things they just weren't celebrated. And so I could kind of see the writing on the wall when I came back. And so I only did Brother Bear, and then I left and started my own company, still in Florida. And while the rest of the studio went on to start developing another film, A Few Good Ghosts. Mm-hmm. And that ended up getting canceled, and then the studio was shut down completely. And that was in about 2003, I think the end of 2003, around the beginning of 2004. But by then I was already not working at the studio when they shut it down. So, but I mean, of course I knew a lot of people that were affected. I mean, there was a huge few hundred people laid off.
You've got so many great films that you worked on, not just with your brother, but other great projects and things you've worked on through the years of you being an animator. What is maybe your favorite character, maybe your favorite Disney character, and maybe your favorite character you've animated?
It's always hard. I have so many favorites. As far as my favorite Disney character, I would probably go back to the older days and just, as a fan, and say it would probably be either a Milt Kahl character or a Ward Kimball character. Those are two of my favorite nine old men Disney animators. And probably one of my absolute favorites shorts that Disney did, or even films in general, is Johnny Appleseed. And almost all of that short would probably be some of my all-time favorite animation. So the Johnny Appleseed character is near and dear to me. I really love Ward Kimball's work. I actually liked some of the shorts and stuff that, not the feature films. I mean, I love the feature films, but I mean, those are the things that stand out to me just from an animation standpoint, because they would put so much into those little short features and things. And I love some of the Goofy animation too, some of that early Goofy stuff.
Sure.
So I guess I tend to like the cartoonier stuff, even though in my career I've done some very subtle characters like Pocahontas. I think my heart will always be for the more cartoony, fun characters, more like Mushu and, Yago and things like that.
Seems to me like you have a very soft spot in your heart for Mushu. And,
yeah, I was going to say that would be for the second part of your question. My favorite character of my characters would be definitely Mushu. I had the most to do with him. I actually designed him and was on that film for a couple of years, almost a year of doing animation tests and designing him, and then like the second year just creating animation for the actual production. And I worked with some great animators, that were on my unit that also animated Mushu, and then cleanup leads and things like that. So it was a great group of people that I worked with too that gives me great memories of that time too.
Now I take it too that you also probably did, the art of animation section of it as well, for the attraction, correct?
Oh, you're talking about what, the actual tour?
The actual tour.
Yeah, I'm actually in it.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to point you in that direction.
Yeah.
I was like, how was it actually still kind of being immortalized in, that type of Disney attraction?
Yeah, it's really weird to me. I mean, it's so funny that I still have friends, now here I live in Nashville,
right.
I have for the last 9 years, and I still have friends here in Nashville that will go to Disney World and come back and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I saw you in Florida." And I'm like, "What? Oh yeah." You're like, "Yeah, I saw you. You were in that film in the animation tour." And so the irony that's there is I had so many fond memories of working at the Disney Florida studio for so many years. It's neat to me that, I'm in a way, at least, still part of that tour and that studio. The studio's not there anymore, but at least part of the tour, because they filmed me. It was one of the very last things I did before I left the studio to move to Chicago. I did the filming where I'm talking to Mushu. It's all about, it's called Drawn to Animation. And that little film that they made, I shot the live action where I'm the animator that comes up and they say who I am and everything. And they, I actually talked to Mushu on another screen. And so I had to kind of look. And the neat thing, the irony there too, is that I actually animated a lot of that Mushu too. Me and another guy did a lot of that Mushu animation so I did both sides, I was Mushu talking to me, and then I was me talking to Mushu, and there's some clips there where I'm actually talking to my own animation. But the neat thing is that they had that at the California Adventure Studio. At one point it was in 3 different, coasts, it was at the Florida studio, or Disney MGM, and then it was at California California Adventures, sorry. And it was showing there. And then I also know, I've heard many people say it's at the Paris studio too. And I speak French there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
When was the last time you've been to any of the Disney parks?
It's been a little while. My daughter was just there. She's a cheerleader, so she was just there at Disney, not MGM, but at the Walt Disney World for the...
I think we were there for that because she was over at... because we were there a few weeks back for, I guess, a cheerleading competition or dance competition.
Every year they have the Nationals there.
Yeah, over that Indiana Jones area.
Yeah.
Yep, we were just there for that.
Oh, okay.
Ran into a bunch of cheerleaders, and that's funny. You guys were probably down there the same weekend we were.
Well, I didn't go, unfortunately. My wife always goes on those trips. We have 4 girls, so she's
goodness me
to the national cheerleading competition without me. So yeah, I would have loved to have gone, but I would have been more about taking in the parks and things like that. So my daughter was there. She enjoyed the parks. And I think the last park I went to was probably Disneyland. I went to California Adventure like 2 summers ago, because my family still lives in California. My mom and dad and my twin brother, he lives out there with his family. So we've done a couple reunion things where we've gone to, Disneyland and California Adventure.
Well, you know what would be really great, Tom, is if you and the family were to come out with us during the D23 Expo this year and meet up with a bunch of our Sorcerer Radio listeners that are from the West Coast area, and we'll just hang out and take in the Expo and check out the Legend Ceremony and all that good stuff.
I'm all about that. And it's neat that you bring that up and mention it to Disney, too, because my twin brother and I, we just did a publicity thing, like probably 2 weeks ago. I was at the Disney Studios, and it was for the Mulan Blu-ray.
That's right.
It's coming out on Blu-ray. So my brother and I were doing some publicity for Disney. They called me and had me fly out for that. And when we did that, I think they saw what a good team my brother and I are. We joke around, we make lots of jokes, we do drawings, and the crowd really liked it. And so they were like, hey, maybe we'll tell the D23 people that, you guys would be great to come out and lecture for that and do a talk.
I would love that. I would, and we know some people there at D23, so, guys over at D23, we need to have the Bancroft brothers in there to do a seminar and a panel, because they're, I'd love to speak to your brother. In fact, the both of you have so many great stories, so many more to tell, and I know that the Disney fans out there would love to hear about it, because I know there's just so much more to tell. Now, you're doing a lot of artwork, and you're very in touch with your fans online through their various social media and your websites. What kind of projects are you working on currently?
A bunch. I have my day job, and because I'm a Christian also, like I mentioned, I had left Disney and I went to Chicago a while in 2000 and worked with Big Idea Productions on VeggieTales, and that was really a faith thing for me too. That was one of the big reasons I did that. And I've kind of kept into that. Right now I'm working with Christian Broadcasting Network, and I'm the head character designer for a TV series they're doing called Superbook, which was a series they had done in the early 80s. It was anime style, kind of looked like Speed Racer, like the old Speed Racer.
I love that. Yes.
And that went around the world, and it was Bible stories, but with some like a little robot and a kid and a girl, and they go back in time on Bible adventures. And so my former partner and I, we had a company called Funny Pages Productions here in Nashville, and I've left it within the last couple of years, but when we were doing that company together, we had developed that show, redesigned all the characters for CBN, and created an all-new Superbook series, and now it's computer animated. And anyway, now I've kind of gotten reattached with them, and so in the last year and a half, I've been working on that, doing character design and animation direction and some storyboarding. And so I get to do that here from Nashville, out of my house, but it's animated in China. So I get to work from here, but, go over computer models of characters, that are sent to me. And on the side, I'm also doing a lot of different things. One is I had developed a comic book series a few years back called Opposite Forces, and so I've started a Kickstarter to basically put all 4 of those issues together and in color, and all the pinups and covers, and added a new sketchbook section. So I have a Kickstarter going on right now. If people want to go to Kickstarter.com and just put in Opposite Forces, they'll find that Kickstarter. And that's a graphic novel that I'm doing right now, and it's all finished, but I'm just compiling the whole thing together. And so that's kind of a dream project. And then I do a lot of freelance for video game companies. The other thing is I'm kind of gotten to be known for character design, and that really kind of started with Mushu. When I did the character design for Mushu, I found kind of reignited a love I had for designing characters. And so as soon as I left Disney, I got a publishing contract with Watson Guptill, and I created one of the first how to design characters books. It's called Creating Characters with Personality.
Right.
And that's become kind of one of the best known character design books, and they use it at a lot of the art schools around the world. And then I've come out recently within the last year with a second edition called Character Mentor. And that's through Focal Press. And that's kind of going sort of now that you have your character, how do you bring it to life? And I talk about expressions and posing and staging your character. So those are kind of how-to art books that I've done. And so because of those 2 art books, especially, I've kind of got a social network built of kind of younger up-and-coming artists. And so I'm kind of keep tapped in with that through social networks like Facebook and DeviantArt.com. Mm-hmm. I'm on both of those. And so that's been nice to be able to kind of keep in contact with the kind of the newer generation of people that are wanting to break into animation and cartooning. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. I do online classes sometimes and workshops for drawing for animation. So
that sounds great. You talked a little bit about up and coming artists and such. Do you have any advice for up and coming artists or wannabe animators that may be listening?
Yeah, I do. A lot of people, I get emails all the time about people that say, I don't know, I've always wanted to work for Disney and it's my dream and my passion. And, how do I get into Disney? And that's probably the number one question. And, there's long answers to that and short answers. And usually these are online, so I try and only give the short ones. But, what it really boiled, I used to give all these things about following your hopes and dreams. And I've found through the years that really the best answer for that is, do you draw every day? And so it's not really an answer, it's more of a question, because if they can't say, I draw every day, then to me that they're not going to make it. And I would rather be, I used to say, all these hopeful dream-like things, but I don't want that as an artist. I want to hear the truth. I want to hear, okay, but no, I mean it. I really want to do this. How do I do it? And most of the time when I ask that question back to them, they say no, and I look at their online portfolios and things like that, and you can tell they don't. They're doodlers. And I said, you got to understand that getting into Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks, it's one of the most competitive things you can do. It's like trying to become Tom Cruise, be the next big actor.
Sure.
Everybody wants that. So yeah, you got to stick out, and to stick out, that means you got to be the best. And so if you're not drawing every day, and I always do this, I say, if I wanted to be an Olympic swimmer, wouldn't you expect that I would have to practice every day? I'd have to swim. I'd have to be in that pool, wouldn't I? Well, if I'm not drawing every day and I want to be an animator, or I'm not even doing computer animation, if I want to be a computer animator, then how's that going to happen? It's not. And it's funny how, I hate to sound like an old man, but this generation, our newer generation, and I have kids that are teenagers and going off to college now, so I guess I could say this, they want everything that we had to fight so hard for. They want it right now.
Right.
And I think that's a sort of a generational lack of understanding right now, is that I didn't look at the Nine Old Men when I was growing up, or Charles Schultz, or any of the cartoonists that I idolized, and go, oh man, I did want I wanted, to have a huge comic strip like Peanuts or one of those that were Garfield, that were popular at the time. But I did have an understanding, at least, that I knew I had to be at a level that they were to be able to get that. I had to at least be able to say, yeah, but my drawings may be different, but they look as professional as theirs do, at least.
It's interesting you say that, because, I think a lot of reality shows kind of dilute the fact that you have to pay your dues, earn your stripes.
Yes.
You have to be able to study and be a student of the craft, whether it's songwriting, singing, anything in art, but really in anything that you want to do. If you want to be the best in the best in the field, you really have to be a student of that. And for me, being a musician or knowing a lot about, instruments or stringed instruments or whatever, it's really important that you know about that stuff so you can be knowledgeable about it. So you read and you study up on that stuff every day. You never stop learning. Yeah. So it's great that you say that, because you are right. I think a lot of people forget that these people paved the way, they made their dues, and there's something to be said about that. Earnest, hard work.
Yeah.
Putting in the work.
And it doesn't happen, you can't call yourself a professional at anything with without doing that work. And, even just going to school, a lot of art schools, I have a love-hate relationship with art schools because, a lot of them make it sound like, yeah, you go to this school, you get the diploma, you're going to become a Disney animator, And even that doesn't happen because, that's a rarity. A lot of people can go to a great art school and come out of there and still struggle to find a job, especially nowadays with this economy.
Sure.
But because they're not the top people, you didn't put in the time either before. I mean, really, your high school years as a cartoonist or as the up and coming animator or anything like that are actually important. A lot of people think, I can just become good after high school and not have drawn at all my whole childhood. Well, that's not true. The ones that really make it, they have drawn their whole lives. I mean, it's a lifetime commitment to become a professional artist, I believe. And
yeah.
A lot of people think they can just pick it up in college and become a top. Well, you're almost too late at that point. I really kind of look at Disney and all the working within any kind of professional art as more like the Olympics, because it is like that. It's kind of a lifetime commitment that starts early.
Absolutely. I had a dream growing up to actually do that, and I drew every day. I drew my own comics when I was, in grade school and wanted to emulate, the Ditkos in the world. And then, of course, the with you and your brother and your animation and all that, had made it happen. I remember when Beauty and the Beast, came out, I was in high school, and Little Mermaid, and I was, drawing all those great characters and doing all that in hopes that one day I'd do it. But then, of course, I also fell in love with music, so I ended up touring the world doing music instead and kind of abandoned pencil. I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when you move from Seattle to Nashville. You move to Nashville, then all of a sudden you pick up a guitar, and then you join a band, and then you tour the world. That's how it works, right?
That's great.
And we did, and we did also pay our dues. But I have to say, on behalf of the Disney community, we really appreciate all the great films and all the works that you're doing back with Disney, and of course your new projects as well. And I have to say, the new stuff does look really, really good. I wish you all the best in that, and I hope that maybe you'll come and do some of these Comic-Con convention style things where you could do your character sketch cards and all kinds of cool stuff, because I know, and I don't know if you have any plans to do any of that. Do you have any upcoming conventions and appearances that the Disney fans may be able to catch you at?
Well, a little bit. I don't know if the Disney fans would be there as much, but I do have a lot of comic fans too, because I've done some Disney comics and things like that for Disney Adventures. But I'm a huge comic book fan, so I am planning on going to Heroes Con, and that's in North Carolina in June, and then also the CTN Expo in California. I can't remember when that is. No. It's after the summer, but that's
okay. We'll put it in our show notes for sure.
Yeah, CTN Expo, and that's more of an animation expo. I may go to San Diego Comic Con. I've done that for the last few years, but I may skip that this year. I'm not sure. I'm still looking at that, but those are two things I'm looking at right now, actually, that I will most likely do. But we want to do D23. I mean, when Disney the marketing guy put that in my head last week, 2 weeks ago, when I was at the studio, I told him, I said, we would love that, both Tony and I, so let's do it,
Yeah. And that's what I'm going to say. That's exactly what I'm going to say to Jeffrey Epstein when we speak to him here in a little bit. We'll say, Jeffrey, why don't we have the Bancroft brothers, come on out and do a panel? Because, once again, the fans would love to see you out there. And by the way, it looks like the CTN convention, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be in Burbank. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's at
November 15th through 17th of this year?
Yes, that's right. And it's right by the Burbank airport there.
Okay, yeah. So the animation capital of the world over there in Burbank, California, and you can go check out Tom and his exploits. Also, I don't know if you want to shout out to your social media and the different websites so people can connect with you and see what kind of work you're throwing up on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely. And I do try and be pretty active. Part of that is because I live in Nashville and I want people to know I'm still alive. But yeah, obviously I'm on Facebook. And where I'd love to direct people with Facebook is to the fan page that my brother and I put together just last August. It's called the Bancroft Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
So look up the Bancroft Brothers on Facebook and like that. And Tony and I both post there quite a lot of artwork. And when we went out to that Disney Studios thing for Mulan, they had us do a lot of drawings of for every single one of the reporters that came. We gave them a free drawing of I did Mushu and Tony did Cricky. And so we did 35 of those. And so we posted some of those on our Facebook page as we were doing them. And actually Disney really liked that because it helps, help them market the Blu-rays. So that was good. And then I'm very active on DeviantArt, which if you're an artist, you've probably heard of that site, but it's kind of like a Facebook for artists where you can post artwork and people can comment on it and things like that. It sounds worse than it is, but it's just nice. So
It's really cool. I see there on your DeviantArt page that you've got the cover for Opposite Forces on there.
Yeah.
And wow, you've got a lot of additional artists that are on there. I noticed Frank Cho's on there and J. Scott Campbell. A bunch of great comic book artists are on there.
Yeah, and that's the trade paperback that I have the Kickstarter going on right now for. And that'll be going for the next, 20 days or so. I think I have that much time left.
Can you give us a little idea of what Opposite Forces is about before we have to let you go?
Yeah, it's kind of the love of animation and comics for me put together. It's the first time I wrote a story all on my own and illustrated it as a comic book series, and I self-published it back in 2000 to about 2006. So this is me compiling all those plus all this other content that I never showed before. But the story is about this kind of nerdy guy, Marty, and this really good-looking girl, Alexis, and they're kind of college age, and they live right across from each other in an apartment. And he's shy and wants to get to know her, really has a crush on her, and she's seen him before, but doesn't even know his name because she won't even talk to him. And there's a local, within the city, there's a local superhero named Captain Dynamo, and he is not a very nice guy. He's kind of a jerk, actually, but everybody thinks he's great. But he's all about, just getting the cameras on him. And so he actually gets attacked by an alien force. They send a ray down to strip him of his powers, but it goes awry. And what ends up happening is when that ray hits him, all his powers are transferred to Marty and Alexis by accident because Captain Dynamo's alter ego, Jack Gent, lives in the same apartment building as those two.
That's wonderful.
And so they happen to be in close contact at that very second that he gets hit by this ray. So anyway, his powers, he's stripped now, and he becomes this kind of crazy hermit guy that is now trying to figure out who stole his powers because now he's powerless. And nobody believes that he's really Captain Dynamo, of course. And so, meanwhile, they have his powers and they become superheroes. They decide, because of course Marty, that's his dream, to become a superhero. He's just a comic geek. And of course, he drags Alexis in because their powers won't work right if they're more than 100 feet apart. So they actually, like I said, opposites forced to attract. And that's where it comes from.
Well, that's wonderful. You can go ahead and check that out and apply to the Kickstarter and support this graphic novel. I think that's an awesome story. And as a artist and comic book fan, we have to support what's going on out there. So thank you so much to that. And find, of course, Tom Bancroft on Facebook. And are you also on Twitter as well?
Oh, yeah, I am. Tom Bancroft 1.
Okay, so we're going to have to schedule a meet at some point. Maybe if anything, we can just have lunch or go out to dinner. We'll just have a good time and hopefully we'll get you there at D23. We'll put in some good words for you.
Yeah, you do that. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Alvin.
No problem. Thanks again. Once again, Tom Bancroft. Everywhere and anywhere on the internet where good art is, that's where Tom is. And you can find him everywhere, DeviantArt and Facebook and Twitter. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Aljon. I appreciate it.
Special thanks to our guest, Tom Bancroft, today. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to follow him on Facebook and Twitter. We'll have all those links on our Facebook page. We'll also be back next week with Kristen and Natalie. Don't forget to check out our sites over there, cookingwithmickeyblog.com, meetthemagic.com, and JediMouseketeer.com. And, of course, more great Sorcerer Radio music all day long at srsounds.com. In the meantime, like us on Facebook and Twitter. For the rest of the team, I'm Aljon, and we'll see you real soon.
Don't just hork it down!
CookingWithMickeyBlog.com. For the latest Disney dining news, reviews, recipes, and how-to videos, visit CookingWithMickeyBlog.com.
What did she say?
She likes a soup.
And for more Disney food news, follow Cooking with Mickey on Facebook and on Twitter at CookingWMickey. CookingWithMickeyBlog.com.
Anyone can cook.
DVC-rental.com.
DVC-rental.com is one of the best kept secrets for getting deluxe Disney accommodations at a substantial savings. You don't have to own at the Disney Vacation Club to stay in one of their deluxe villas.
DVC-rental.com.
They work with dozens of DVC members who are unable to use their points and rent them to you for about a third of what you'd pay to stay at the same resort on your own, not being a DVC member. You can also stay at one of the 7 resorts found on Walt Disney World property or those at Disneyland, Vero Beach, and Hilton Head.
DVC-rental.com.
To book your Disney Vacation Club rental today or to find out more, visit www.dvc-rental.com or email scott@dvc-rental.com or call 407-494-2320. Tell Scott you heard about them on Sorcerer Radio. Call 407-494-2320. 407-494-2320.
DVC-rental.com. WDW Tiki Room 2014 event coverage made possible by Halloween Express. For Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars costumes, visit HalloweenExpress.com. MagicalJourneysVacations.com. Book your Disney vacation or cruise today. Jedi Mouseketeer. Geeky news from the universe of Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars at www.JediMouseketeer.com. DiningAtDisney.com. The happiest plate on earth. Dining tips and more at DiningAtDisney.com. WDW After Dark. The weekly webcast for adult Disney fans at www.wdwafterdark.com. And Sorcerer Radio. All Disney music all day long at srsounds.com.
Crisis for the geek kind. Top geek officials admit they underestimated the hipsters' defense capability. Join the geek revolution and save the galaxy. Geeks from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future. They're doing their part. Are you? Want to know more? Join Weeby Geeks and the Geek Revolution and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship. Listen to Weeby Geeks podcast on iTunes and Stitcher or online at WeebyGeeks.net. Weeby Geeks, your voice for the Geek Revolution. Want to know more?
Get your tickets right over here for Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. This has been a recording.
It's the WDW Tiki Room podcast.
Glad to see you all aboard. Sure, or wherever you are.
With your hosts, Kristen and Aljon.
So it is. And what darling people I have sitting under me.
Hello, Disney fans. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Aljon of the WDW Tiki Room podcast. On this podcast, we feature highlights from our Tiki Room morning and midday shows that originally aired on Sorcerer Radio.
You can interact with us via Twitter at WDW Tiki Room and email us at trms@srsounds.com. Also, check out our website, wdwtikiroom.info.
Subscribe to the show via iTunes and Blueberry to get Disney news, interviews, trip planning info, and don't forget to give us those 5-star ratings.
And make sure to tune in Fridays at 8 a.m. for the Tiki Room Morning Show under new management, with an encore presentation at 7 p.m. Then at 1 p.m. for the Tiki Room Midday Show, all times Eastern, only on Sorcerer Radio, srsounds.com.
The WDW Tiki Room Podcast with Kristen and Aljon. Thanks for listening. Enjoy.
This podcast is a joint production of the Sorcerer Radio Network, WDW Tiki Room, and the Weeby Geeks Podcast Network. WDW Tiki Room is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or its holdings and is intended for entertainment purposes.